from the Great Central Fire. On this episode, it was absolutely outstanding to be able to have Katherine Heinle on our show. We were able to catch up on family connections that go back many generations. Katherine talks about life as a point kid and all the antics that they were up to growing up. She talks about her early days when she finally got to be an Ogichi camper and some of the funny stories and pranks that took place at that time. She talks about lessons learned from trips during her time at Ogichi. And she guides us through the upcoming Edge of the Atlantic all-girls Arctic trip and the excitement that surrounds that. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode from the Great Central Fire. Okay, everybody. Boy, this is a great day from the Great Central Fire today. I am so excited for this episode to talk with somebody whose family has been such a big part of my family. And I just can't wait to dive into this and talk about that and everything else. But today we want to welcome Katherine Heinle from the Great Central Fire. And Katherine, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You've been traveling a little bit.
Yes, I was just visiting my sister in Europe, but happy to be back and happy to be on here. I was going to say you've really set me up well with kind of having all the greats on here before me. I mean, I've really loved listening to all the episodes, especially Kathy and George's. They were just wonderful.
Yep. No, they're great people, and big, you know them very well, and
Yes.
your family name. I mean, and then we'll go back to the early days here, Katherine. I mean, I remember when you were
Oh boy.
born. I remember coming up. I wasn't full time, but the year before, I believe you were born in '02, correct?
Yes, that's right.
In March of '02.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that put my first summer on Rainy when I was about 3 months old, which
Okay.
is
Me
pretty
and you are
crazy.
in the same boat, so we'll get into that. So I want to start with the early years, Katherine.
Yeah,
With your family there, your parents there. You were born in. I was there in '01.
Minneapolis.
I was there in '01
Uh-huh.
with taking a trip out with your dad. I was there for half the summer,
Oh,
and
really?
then in '02, I believe you were born in '02, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, and so you were up there at 3 months old, which I know all about that. I was born in April, and so I was there at 2 months old, so I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. And
Yeah, it's been kind of wild. I mean, in preparing for this and everything, I've really kind of had to reflect on my whole life.
right. So how were the years up there as a young kid? Now you were a Kuchiching because your parents were working there. How did that
Yes,
go
yeah.
for you?
It always was a blast. I mean, you kind of had nature's playground right at your fingertips. And I guess I was kind of the first of another round of point kids, as we, I guess, like to call them. But growing up with the Verkamps, the Downies, the Howlers, it was such a pleasure. And I really think of those kids as my younger siblings, and I have so many memories with them, just like some of my early memories on the island, just running down the paths, and we would do different camping trips on the ball field or paddle out to Airplane Island and stuff like that.
No, that's wonderful here because we had the same thing,
Hmm.
with a different group of people with the Schroeder family, with the
Yeah, that's something we share, both growing up
with the
there.
Dryden kids and the the Pearlings. I'm trying to think who else was up there. I mean, just so many the Lineberger kids. I mean, so many younger kids up there that we spent down there on the point. We had a lot of memories down on
Yeah,
the point as young kids before camp.
that's for sure.
Um,
Hmm.
but Katherine, times have changed. Way back in the day, I don't know if you ever heard these stories, and
All
it's
right,
just
let's hear
a
it.
different time. I'm not blaming anybody, but there was a time the females were allowed to go to the dining hall, and that was it. They had to go back down to the point for the rest of it. I mean, they didn't want
That's
anybody
pretty
out.
wild to hear.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah, especially since like my kind of group of kids, there were a lot of us. My sister and I, the Verkamp girls, of course, Miss Ellie Downey, all of them. Yeah. Um, yeah, we had a lot of fun years together, and I kind of like think of that as the perfect childhood. You're spending your entire summer outdoors, and of course, my grandparents also had a place on the lake, so many of my days before I was a camper at Ogichi was spent hauling, chopping logs, building docks with my grandpa over there, um, which was, of course, a great use of time. But it was also really wild because, I mean, you have such a great community growing up with everyone around you there. And I just had hundreds of older brothers, I guess. And I'm kind of learning different life lessons left and right. I really wouldn't change it for the world.
Yep. No, yeah, I get it. And talking about your grandparents, I mean, our families go way back. You may know this, you may
Yeah.
not, but your grandfather and my mother, who you knew, they
Hmm.
were in the same kindergarten class together.
I know they go way
They
back.
go way back, and I believe my father was in your grandparents' wedding, I believe,
Uh huh. Yes, I've heard that
and
one
I
as
was
well.
supposed to be in your parents' wedding, and I was coaching at the time,
But
and I had no assistant, so I couldn't leave to go. I was so irritated by
oh
that,
boy, come on.
and because I missed their wedding, because I was in St. Louis for a game, and
Hmm.
but I was scheduled to be in their wedding as well. But the family's obviously a great bond, and like you said, that bond you have with those kids that you grew up with, that'll never leave you. It's like you had
No,
your own
never.
camp within a camp.
Yeah, yeah. We called, or there was a certain era where I think it was once I started going to Ogichi, but Madeline, Charlie, Sydney, Charlotte, Greta, Finn were rather rebellious, and they called themselves the pirates of the island because they would go around. We got a bunch of water balloons from the dollar store that year, and so they would go around chucking these water balloons at kids, stealing their baseball caps and everything, and it just was a hoot. Kind of watching it from above because of course I was in the midst of the chaos, but I was also older, kind of doing my own thing. And I don't know, I was always in charge of babysitting them, which was just hilarious because left and right they were doing just running all over the island, but
Oh,
a good group.
yeah. Oh, they were learning early about how it
Yeah,
works up there. you know.
yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
So you grew up and things kept moving, and then of course,
Hmm.
right around the time you were born, the girls' camp started with Ogichi,
Yeah.
and in 2011, what about was your first summer at Ogichi?
Yeah, 2011 or 2010. I started when I was 8. But even before then, it's cool because I really have seen Ogechi through the years, even though I started as a camper later. But before I was a camper, my mom would drop me off in the Rainy Lake Lodge, and I'd go like color with all the girls, and some campers that even I'm still from that era. I'm still close with Megan Maycheck. I remember early memories with her, and she is out in Colorado where I am now, and we still keep in touch very, very often. So those memories are definitely very special ones.
Right, right. So,
Yeah.
um, like how many summers prior to your being a camper? What 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 summers? Because this happened to me as well over at
Hmm.
Kuchiching. They would let me take a couple morning classes,
Yes,
and not
yes, we
not the full
started doing.
6, not the full,
uh
but just a couple. So my aid number one was indie dancing. I just couldn't wait to get out there. I just would sit out there and study and watch them forever. And so, I'm sure you experienced the same thing going over to Ogichi too, just to get a little
hmm
taste in your mouth with it.
Yeah, yeah. Something that I kind of like to share with people is that even though I kind of obviously grew up in the camp community and it was almost a birthright that I was going to go, my parents actually showed me a few other camps when I was maybe 6 or 7. But I believe I toured Birchwood and a few other camps in northern Minnesota. But for me, it was always Ogeechee. I grew up in just like admiring all of those girls who I would spend days with in the Rainy Lake Lodge, and I knew I wanted to be just like them. So,
Did you always have, and we'll get into this stuff later too, because I know you've done some great trips. You got one coming up that we want to hear about.
oh
Um,
yeah.
Growing up, Catherine, did you always have the love that knew that you wanted to go to a camp and be in the outdoors and all that stuff? Is that something you learned from your parents? Because your mom's enjoys the outdoors as well quite a bit, correct?
Yes, and she loves to remind us that she also has a vast canoeing history of her own. She grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, so her family would always be exploring the Boundary Waters. And actually, I believe my parents tell a story about how when my parents were dating, my papa was a avid outdoorsman, and kind of the true test was my dad went on a canoe trip with him, and my mom and the family. But obviously, he passed with flying colors. But I just think that that's so funny. Um, but yeah, it was always Ogechi for me. I I mean, we grew up at family dinners talking and trading of different stories, and obviously my grandpa went on an Arctic trip of his own, but just hearing all of my older cousins, my dad, my uncles talking about these great memories, and I have a vivid memory one Christmas of my grandpa and Chuck Eddy sitting around the fire, and they're just going at it with camp stories left and right, and I kind of was just sitting there not really saying anything, but I knew I wanted friendships like that in my life, and I knew that the trips that you go on, you bond with people in such a different way that you do through school, through different adventures, and so I definitely have gotten that at Ogichi.
Yeah, yeah, and that's Chuck Eddy. Wow, there's a name from the past, and we lost
Yeah,
him as well. I mean,
yeah,
he was a great guy, and your
mhm,
grandfather, and um, we miss having those guys around. Mr. Eddy was a great person, and my dad talked a lot about him. There's a video
mhm,
out there. I don't know if you've ever looked at it, and people can look this up. David Barry, who's the brother of John Barry, two
mhm,
great cooch people. David Barry took a trip back in 1969, I believe it was, and he took a video. He's a professional. He's a professional in the film industry out in San Francisco area. But he took a video back when he was younger. He was the junior staff guy, and the other two guys on the trip were my dad and your grandpa together. Your dad or your grandpa had come up to take a trip
uh-huh.
out with my dad.
Oh,
He
that's
wasn't there
special.
full time, and Chuck Eddy was a junior staff guy. And some of the campers on that trip were Buzz Ecker and Bill Easley.
Oh
Uh,
my god.
were on that trip, and there may have been a few other ones that I can't think of right
Mhm.
now. But the reason I bring that story up is then fast forward in '01, I came up to do the same thing. It's like life again with your dad and me taking the
Yeah,
trip out in 2001.
mhm.
But I'll tell you, those were your grandfather and your dad, Catherine. And I've never had the opportunity to trip with you, but they are two of the best trippers I've ever been with. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it was not a lot growing up with that, but I knew that there was kinda that golden standard, and but I also always was kinda driving for that sense of achievement for myself, through different trips, and I remember being put on my first 10-day canoe trip, and it was just the greatest thing ever because I was either 9 or 10 years old, and I remember that moment pretty vividly even though I was so young because that's really when things turned for me because I really wanted to do well by myself, but also by the others on my canoe trip. And I feel like that's something I always strive for, especially now as staff. But just kind of giving it my all.
Do you remember where you went your first trip?
Yes, I do. And I flipped through some of my old trip journals before this, which was just hilarious because the early days are talks about PB&J and J and how many portages we had. But that was a Sturgeon River trip, so I think in the Turtle River Provincial Park.
And do you
Yeah.
remember who is your trip leaders that for that?
Yes, I do. It was Lindsay Wiebold and Grace Webster, who I believe also went by Glitter Wings. But some of my really close friends on that trip, Claire Gansmueller, who you know, Maggie Bodman, Ellie Brummel, we had a good group. And I mean, you think about challenging moments through camp, and I always think that, I mean, it changes based on the age that you are, the difficulty of the trip. And I think back to portages in those days, and man, it was just tough even carrying a Wanigan. But it's the best sort of thing to throw yourself into that environment at that age because you really learn so much from it.
Did you love it right away? Right when you were
Oh,
young?
yeah, yeah,
See, you
yeah,
were
yeah.
different. I
I've
hated
always
it young. I was like, what in the
really?
Oh yeah, I don't know what I was. But as I got older, I really learned
Yeah.
to love it, which some that happens to some.
Mhm.
Um,
It's type 2 fun, of course, and you always learn to love it, but straight from the beginning I did, and I mean, I was lucky with early exposure to camp, and
yeah.
also I went on canoe trips when I was younger with my parents, and my siblings, so I had that, exposure, as I said, to it, but, I mean, I never knew what I was doing,
Well,
but I mean, the group of girls that Kathy started with, the counselors that I had, I owe a lot to them because they really raised me in a way of they taught me like everything that I knew. And I've been lucky to trip with a lot of amazing counselors, a lot of the six north of 60 girls. But yeah, now being on staff, this past summer was my fourth year, so I feel like I've really reflected on those early years.
yeah. So your time as a camper, I mean, You love the in camp and everything. What do you want? I'll leave it
Oh
open
yeah.
to you. However you want to talk about the whole experience, and you can start
Hmm.
with what the camp looked like from a physical plant in 11 compared to what it looks like
Oh my God.
now, and
Yeah.
and the people that were along your road. I'll just leave this wide
Hmm.
open to you now to cut loose about your whole camper experience there.
Okay, well, there's a lot to say, so feel free to cut me off whenever. But I mean, on Kathy's episode, she talked about how we essentially were dealing with the aftermath of Rainy Lake Lodge and it kind of being on its last legs. So I mean, we were in all those old cabins as campers, and I don't even know if I think our counselors were sleeping on the couches because it was like the lodge cabins. So it was set up with a kitchenette, two couches, and then we were between bunk beds and twin beds, queen beds. It's really funny thinking about it now. But those early days were really good ones. They were really silly ones, and camp was smaller, so I just have so many cherished memories there. And I always lucked out with a great group of friends. Like the girls my age, it was steady. There were always a lot of people going. And I think back to again just the amazing counselors I had, but especially Kit Summers, Molly Knoll always kept things very fun. They were always riding around on their bikes on the ball field during evening activity or something. But there was one summer where Justin Bieber was huge. Justin Bieber was always playing in the dish room when we were doing dishes. And, he's Canadian. And one summer, Kit and Molly convinced everyone that Justin Bieber was going to come to Ogichi Dockway, the one and only. And they took videos of us. I was a chickadee at this point, just like on some sort of flip camera. And they were like, tell Justin why he should come visit Ogichi Dockway. What fun is he going to have? Maybe he should go on a canoe trip. And thinking about it now, it's obviously so silly, but just so funny memories like that. They just really get me. Um, but yeah, so many names to remember back then. Obviously, Claire Gansmuller and I started out pretty strong together. And I still keep in touch, honestly, with all of those girls who I was a chickadee with, which is the 10-day program. I actually just visited one of my good friends, Julia Hender, who didn't go to camp in like the later high school years, but we really grew up together. I just visited her, stayed with her family in Chicago, which was really cool. But I say I'm a bad texter, but I really do try to keep up with camp people. And there's so many names: Maggie Bodman, Anna Mayhew, Kara Emma Hauserman, Abby Hofer. Funny story about her, actually, early camp years, and her dad, Bill.
I just talked to him
But
not long ago. Yeah.
yeah, for Abby and Riley's first summer at camp, there was a spot in the forums signing up where you could put nicknames, and he put their nicknames as Bugsy and Chester. So all the counselors thought that their names were Bugsy and Chester Hofer, which was just hilarious. Um, but yeah, back to the tripping. I loved it from the start, and there was one moment with Kathy where our chickadee trips, we would go just around Voyagers,
Yeah.
and they would drive us around on the pontoon all around the lake. So you thought you were going in the middle of nowhere. You thought that you were nowhere near camp. And Kathy pulled me aside before one trip and she said, Catherine, your trip might end up close to camp, and I don't want that to take away from your experience or others. So if you notice anything, you hear any bells, just kind of keep it to yourself. And little did you know, we ended up camping on Airplane Island, and then the boat ride back was so funny because it was just right across the lake. But all the other campers, and well, not I figured it out, of course, but they were like, "What is this? What's going on?"
Right.
Yeah,
But it's a
but
big
those
thing
days
when
with
you're younger. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And as you get
yeah.
older and you go back and look at everything looks smaller.
Mhm, mhm,
Because when
mhm.
you're a young
Yeah,
kid, everything looks so big to you.
yeah. Those early days with Kathy, though, they were great. It was really special listening to her podcast. And I mean, we all grew up. She taught us so many different life lessons and messages. And this will be familiar for Ogichi campers and staff, but she started the Pine Tree story, the 29E story, the Coffee Bean story, all of which are either read at meals or at uh, Little Council or other events. But I mean, I grew up kind of thinking her middle name was Adversity because she was always preaching to us about it. And those stories that she shared in camp, in turn, were really helpful on trip because they kept us all going. They kept it light, kept it fun. I was talking to Curtis Simmons a few summers ago about him and Hank's first trip, the inaugural trip for Ogichi. Um, and Curtis was saying he came back from it and just talking to other cooch counselors and other alumni, obviously they were like, well, so how was it leading these girls on this trip? And I remember he said something along the lines of, they really do it well. They keep laughing and they keep a smile on their face throughout it all. And I feel like that really embodies Ogichi tripping. That's something that I always try to keep in mind, through those tough moments when you wake up, you hear rain on the tent and you just really don't want to get out, but you just got to keep going and make the best of it.
That's everything I've heard, from the people that I've talked to, and of course, I talked to Bart Vollmer a lot, and he just
Bart.
said, "Oh yeah," he just said these girls are just having an absolute ball over here.
Yeah.
With him, you mentioned Molly Nolan and Kit Summers.
Mm-hmm.
I might have shared this story. I don't know if I should share it or not, but I think I will.
I think you should.
We can edit it if need be. You might have heard this, but Bart told me this story. They're so funny. I'd love to get those two on here sometime together.
Yeah, that would be a great dual episode.
But they were working with Bart one day.
Oh,
have you heard this story?
I don't think so. I mean, that's where all the
Bart was up on the roof working, and they were down below at the saw cutting for Bart, and they would just pass the boards up. So Bart yelled down, hey, I need 116.5 or whatever it was, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and he's looking at other stuff, and hey, I need 116.5. Let's go. And he's waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. So finally, he walks over to the edge of the roof where he looks down, and I don't know which one was which, but one was bent over. The other one had the measuring tape out, measuring the back side of the other one. And Bart said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're trying to figure out who's got the biggest rear end." They were measuring each other because they wanted to know who had the biggest rear end. I just was losing it laughing. I mean, that's the fun that was going on up there. That goes on up there all the time. Every time I see kids, they're always laughing and smiling.
No, and I mean those sort of stories are endless. They and their group of counselors, they all still keep in touch, which is really cool. Kit will sometimes come over for dinner when all of us are home, which is super fun. But another funny memory is we'll do the talent show at Ogichi, which is, a renowned event. And they will have MCs who are, kind of getting it all going. But I remember as a young camper, Gretchen Stair, and I think it was Molly Knoll, did it. And they had these personas. One was Russian. Maybe they both were Russian. And they had these accents and these crazy outfits, which is funny. And eventually that evolved to, I think, Lauren Schiller and Rosie Ecker. And then the past few summers has been Terry and Gary, who I'll keep those names anonymous because there was some debate about who was Gary this year. But it's things like that, kind of inherent traditions that have just kept going to this day, that it's so cool to see those through. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of it.
Yep, no doubt. So you transition, you went through the whole camper scene,
yes.
On staff now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the world of what you're doing. I mean, you're taking out the big trips, which is a big responsibility.
Yes, but it's been a great
different
pleasure.
than going down the Quetico, or it's different than going down the Turtle.
Yeah.
Just talk about that a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit about your trip coming up. I want to hear about that a little bit too.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I mean, growing up as a camper, I did pretty much every trip that Ogichi offered, and of course, I learned a lot through those, kind of climbing the ranks of those trips. And I mean, each trip I feel like changed me in a certain way, but I'm going to start with actually my Mountain River trip, which I was lucky to go on in 2019. I always think of it as a gift trip. I was still a camper, actually. And two women from the 6 North of 60 trip led it, Lindsay Wiebold and Emily Spangler. But that trip really changed kind of everything for me in terms of my mindset towards tripping and transitioning towards staff, because we went up for 3 weeks in the Northwest Territories. And I mean, I grew up camping in the North Woods, and even that is amazing. But being up there in the Mackenzie Mountains, we paddled the Mountain River for, I believe, 22 days, and it really changed the game for me. It showed me what sort of adventure is out there. What's cool about that trip is that while we were on the river the whole time with different sizable rapids, it went through 7 different canyons, but we also had the time to do some backpacking and exploration because really that area is just gorgeous. And I was flipping through my journal from that trip because I like to write every night, and especially now on staff, I'm pretty avid about logging. But I mean, every entry is just saying, "I can't believe my eyes. I don't know how to put this into words. It's so utterly gorgeous." But we would hike different mountains. We discovered like a triple set of waterfalls one day that we deemed Ogichi Falls. And that river really isn't traveled much. I think it's 40 people per year. So it was just the ultimate gift to be able to do that. And then fast forward a year, 2020, I wasn't able to have my CIT summer, but I learned so much on that trip about myself as a leader that I mean, I was kind of ready for it. And my first summer on staff, the border was closed, obviously. So I led a trips in the Boundary Waters and then one Cabato Cabatogma, excuse me,
Yep.
loop with our youngins. But for that first trip, it's really one that stands out to me because I was leading it with Ashley Ackley, and we had, I think, 11, 12-year-olds, and it was a lot of their like first year at camp. So obviously, trip is going to be tough, but my dad told me from the beginning, he was like, you just have to show them a good time. It's going to be tough for them, but you have to show them a good time. And I actually, in turn, learned a lot from those girls. We had some adversity in itself because the river that we were paddling actually dried up. So we had to turn around and kind of figure our way out of there without the correct maps, which I guess I think of it as I hit the ground running because that was a huge challenge to have as my first year on staff, but it taught me a lot. And in the reroute, we had, I think, 4 or 5 1-mile portages that we had to do to get to our pickup spot, which for that age, and I mean, for me, that's tough, right? But I remember that last portage to get back on track. And I went back for either a second or third canoe. And I had sent everyone else down. I was like, let's load the boats. Let's get ready. Let's have a snack. Let's keep on trucking. We got to finish this. And I have the canoe on my shoulders, and I see 2 of my campers, Evie and Marissa, running back. And they just encouraged me the whole way. They were like, you're so strong. And I mean, that really meant the world to me. And it changed things for me at camp because it taught me that I can give back the experience that I had as camper to other people. And that's really just been the greatest thing. Yeah, but I've led other trips. I think the Flint, English, Allenwater Kopka with Helen Vandenbark, which was a blast. I mean, you talk about how our families have known each other for so long.
Oh yeah.
And now as like one of the later generations, it's really cool to be able to continue that with other girls. And Helen and I led a trip together, which was super, super special. And I guess fast forward to this past summer where I led the haze with Maddie Sanford, who, of course, you know her name. But again, just such a gift to be able to do that with them.
Yeah, the names I love.
Yeah,
Because these are the same names, and so I try to piece together who's daughter and whose son,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the Vandenbark name and all of
mm,
them. I just love hearing the names.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
great to see it all continuing,
mhm,
and
yeah,
people. And your dad gave you probably one of the best bits of advice that I would give any young staff person right now that's working up there. Um,
yeah,
you can make any trip as fun or as miserable as you want to as a leader or as the staff people.
mhm,
Your dad always made the trip fun for all those kids when we were on all those together. And I'll throw out one other name of a person that was unbelievable and really taught me a lot about doing that. And that's a name that you've probably heard is a guy named Steve Upson,
yes,
who's
yes.
he
I
was
actually tripped with his daughter led me on the blood vein. Hmm.
Sarah. Yeah, Sarah's great.
Yeah,
But
hmm.
I'll tell you, it could have rained for 14 straight days, and he still had fun. And I mean,
That is a really amazing quality.
it is, and he just you can make it as trip leaders, like your dad told you. Make it. It's going to be tough, but keep it fun for all of them. Keep them upbeat and keep it fun, and that's
Yeah.
a great bit of advice and something that all
Hmm.
the young staff that are taking kids out on trips need to keep in mind. I think so.
Yeah, I agree. And contentness can be a hard thing out there. I mean, it's such a remote environment
Yeah.
and you don't have a roof over your head and your comfy bed to sleep in, but I've really learned through being on staff that if you go out with the perspective of I'm going to enjoy each day, be content, even if it rains every day, you're going to have the best time and you're really going to have an impact on your campers, which at the end of the day is like all I would hope to have. Um, yeah. And there's actually I wrote this down because it's something that I like to read to my campers before every trip that I go on, and it's actually from the old Kuchiching Cruiser's Handbook. There's, I think it's 2 pages of passages, and it talks about, I think the first line opens with, would you rather have a good trip or would you rather have an outstanding trip? If all you do is paddle and camp, you will reach your destination as planned. But the enjoyment your fellow trippers, realize from their efforts will be quite limited. And there's so much more about that. But first session this past summer, Annabelle Weil and I led a CIT exploratory route, and we talked about that a lot with our girls. And there's a lot to learn from that handbook, but kind of just going back to the basics and remembering to be very intentional with your time, even if it's just like taking 5 minutes out of your morning to make coffee. Sometimes I like to do, actually, a Kit's name is coming up a lot here, but a Kit Summers classic, which is to make a latte on a canoe trip, where you just take milk pow in your Nalgene, shake it up, and you pour it over your coffee. But doing those sort of little things really makes your day and kind of can change the whole thing.
Yeah, it does. And stopping to fish, stopping to swim, just,
Yes. Yeah,
anything like
That's,
that, I mean, it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And we always loved the colorful. I know, being a staff guy, we used to always love the kids with the colorful personalities that were, doing goofy stuff.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I
There are
love
some
that.
characters. Yeah. My campers these past few summers have really cracked me up. And again, co-leading the haze, 3 weeks I always say is the perfect time to be on a canoe trip with people, because you really see the ins and outs of their personality, and together as a group you kind of have to work through being out in the woods for that long, and you really learn about a person doing that. But when I was thinking about, funny moments from being on staff, I just kind of really think to my campers, like the past 2 summers, I've been grateful enough to lead the haze for the past 2 summers, and the groups of girls that I have had have just been stellar, and how hardworking they are, but also I'm like laughing all day long because they're just like hooligans.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So let me talk real quick. So
hmm
your plans next summer to go, you're going back up or no, wait a minute.
I'm still.
You're going to a trip. You're going to do a trip, right?
Oh yes. Oh
Okay.
yes.
We'll get to that in
I'm
a second. Let me
unsure
go
about
back a
first
little bit.
session.
So
Okay. Okay.
you went to the University of Denver, correct?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
finished?
And
You're finished
I'm
there.
still there. I graduated my undergrad in 2024. Took a year off to travel, and now I'm back for my master's, which I think will prohibit me from going first session, but I will be up in July for my Arctic trip.
Okay, let's talk about that now. And I want to
Yeah,
bring
let's
that up
talk
because I
about
ran
that.
into a young lady, a really nice young girl. I met her for the
Uh-huh.
first time in the office, Maddie Anderson.
Oh my goodness, I was just on the phone with her
Yeah,
probably an
she's
hour.
just, I was down at the camp office not long ago, and we
Yeah.
started to talk and shared a few stories. And I think she looked at me like, who is this guy? Who's this joker? How does he know some of these people? But that's all right. I'm used to that. But tell us about
Yeah.
what you've got coming up this summer.
Yeah, I mean, well, Maddie's really at the spirit of it all. She's done amazing work in progressing this trip, because I kind of think of it as the ultimate side hustle, planning for the proposal, writing everything out, and now we're at the point of outreach. But anyways, yes, I remember the idea for the trip starting when I was in like one of the staff cabins. They're called Moose and Wolf, which Emmy and Maddie were living in that summer. And Annabelle Weil was talking about this idea where you go on an Arctic trip, but you're still able to serve at camp for one session. And we were just having this sort of enigmatic conversation, and Annabelle's like, we got to do it. We got to do it. And so we had kind of been talking about it during preseason. And then after my first session trip, which was the Allen Water with Helen that year, had 3 days kind of as a turnaround before the haze. And I remember Emmy Krill and Madeline Anderson coming up to me being like, do you want to actually do this? Do you want to do an Arctic trip together? And I'm like, hell yeah. There was no doubt about it in my mind. I'm around at camp for so many reasons, namely the community and the friendships that I have, but also for the tripping. It's a huge thing for me, something that I really love to do. So yeah, there was no question about it. But yes, next summer we leave July 8th, I believe. 5 other women and I, Emily Kay Dunning, newly married, Abby Orn, Madeline Anderson, Annabelle Weil, Emmy Krill, and I will be paddling around 1,000 kilometers in Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec. It's a 35-day canoe trip. paddling rivers such as the DePaul and the George River. But we start like just outside of Labrador City, and then once we cross into Quebec, we're mainly paddling that for the entirety, and that brings us up to Ungava Bay, which feeds into the Atlantic. It's really an interesting region, and we knew we wanted to do something special with the trip, so it's really cool to expand the depth of the foundation, bringing our Arctic trips, bringing our trips east and west. So it'll be really cool to explore that region
Yeah,
and
I don't
be
remember
back in kind of the mountainous territory.
going east. I don't remember anybody going east like that before.
No, yes, this is the first time, which is really
Okay.
exciting. And there's been so much inspiration throughout this all. I mean, I have my own personal inspirations, but also the 6 North of 60 trip that happened in 2017, I believe. Those women going out really set the stage for us, and they just had an incredible trip. And of course, there were going to be women who eventually went out with the Camping and Education Foundation, but it's an honor to follow them up, as well all the other Arctic trips that have gone out in the past. I mean, given how I grew up at camp, a lot of those guys who went out, like they were again like older brothers to me. I grew up with them on the island, and there have been so many great trips that have gone out, and so we're lucky to be the next. We're lucky to be the next, that's for sure. It's a really interesting region, and I couldn't be more excited.
Oh, we can't wait to hear about it. And and
Yeah,
and, and now the you said one of the girls' last name Weil, is that correct?
yeah, Annabelle Weil,
Annabelle. What now? Who's her
cousin
dad?
of the
Who?
cousin of the Shooks.
Yeah. So they're who's is it? Tim, Chris, or Scott is her dad? Do you know?
Chris, I think.
Yeah.
It's not
There was
Scott.
three Wiles that were
Yeah,
Scott and
yeah.
Chris and Tim.
Oh my God, Annabelle, forgive me.
That's
I spent a
okay.
few days with him at the
I didn't mean to
Thunderbird
put
the
you on
other
the
summer.
spot, but there was three of them that I remember when I was there. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
No, Annabelle's been great. She actually joined us. She wasn't a camper at Ogichi, but it's really cool because everyone, and maybe this can be a plug for our website, our mission, everyone check it out. But everyone who's going on this trip with me, I mean, I would consider them to be a great friend, which is very special. And they also have a really cool individual background. Annabelle, namely, is a really great one because although she didn't grow up going to Ogichi, she joined as staff. She has an awesome background in leading trips in South Africa. She's done a crazy amount of backpacking and whitewater rapid trips. And I mean, you can really see it. She has a true grit about her. And like I said, we led a trip together this summer, which is also a really cool thing. A lot of us have led trips together. Emily Dunning and I led the first trip down the Hayes. Emmy and I have tripped together on the Mountain River. Annabelle and I have tripped together, and there's also a lot of other pairings. So I think that the dynamics certainly will be on.
well, you've got a ton of experience. I mean, just hearing all these trips you've been on. So let me ask you this, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
After your trip this summer,
Yeah.
what does the next summer look like for Katherine Heinle? To stay
Oh boy.
to keep attending and working at Ogichi, to
Yeah.
to try
Well,
to try to find a teaching job so that you can keep your
mhm.
summers free. What's the future
I know
plans
that's
for
kind of the
Catherine?
ultimate life hack. Well, I have, after doing the Edge of the Atlantic, I'll have one more year left of grad school. So things are kind of up in the air about how I want to follow my profession. But with the transition of the Arctic program, moving towards sending campers up north, which is super cool. I don't know if you guys have talked about it on the podcast yet. I would hope to be able to be a leader for those trips.
Right. Well, let's put a plug in for your website for your trip here. Can
Yeah.
you tell us where that is so people can look?
Yes, it should be just edgeoftheatlantic.blog. You can find us on Instagram as well. We have a convenient link to the GoFundMe, and there's a lot of information, about our route, about our mission, and I'll talk about that a bit more too. Um, I mean, in committing ourselves to this adventure, we would only hope to empower campers at Ogichi to hope to do the same thing eventually, and Kuching, of course. But also, as we talked about, establishing a new Arctic route for the foundation. But we also hope to give back to efforts of Arctic conservation. Excuse me, this is a lot of talking. 30% of all of our proceeds raised, especially if we go over our limit, will be given to an organization called it's Worldwide Fund or WWF Canada, and they support conservation efforts all across the Arctic. I'm kind of working on something as well where I'd hope to do research with a university. I've been talking with a Couchiching alum, actually, Graham Timney, about how we could either take water samples, land samples to commit to that further, which would be really cool.
Right. And I wonder if smaller trips can come about from your experiences that you guys are getting ready to hit this summer, that we can go east like that.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
my dad was big on, how big he was with tripping, and
Of
he
course.
knew every
I've
rock
a
and
lot of
stick
great
and tree.
memories with your dad.
What's that?
I said I have a lot of great memories with your dad.
Well, he knew every rock and portage and campsite there was.
Yeah, that sort of memory just astounds me. My dad kind of has the same as well. But, we send a lot of great routes out, and the hope would be that we could eventually send one of these newer Arctic trips on this route that we do. And we'll hope to log it entirely, and then we'll, of course, donate all of our gear back to the foundation.
Right. That's great. Well, I just wanted to see what your plans were for down the road, and
I'll always be around camp. That's for sure.
Well, it's hard. It doesn't leave our blood, does it, Katherine?
I know. Yeah. And throughout my life, I'll always be involved. That's something that I'm very sure about. And I mean, I've been very lucky with the trips that I've gone on, not only as a camper, but also as staff. And I would hope to continue those trips. There's so many routes across Canada that we have yet to explore, and it could really expand the foundation in just such a wonderful way.
Well, I'm not in the administrative part of camp, but I can speak for myself. Thank gosh your plans are to stay around, because I think you're a huge asset to that place. And, just being up there in the summers the last week and having you come over and visit.
Oh, yeah. It's always fun to visit that week.
With my nephews and with Claire Gonzamuller.
I have a funny story about your nephews, which kind of alludes to growing up at Couchiching. Of course, they were around during the summers as well, but one summer, I guess I talked about the summer of Justin Bieber. I suppose it was the summer of High School Musical. But Ben, Jack, and I decided that we were going to put on a performance during intercession for all the Couchiching staff. So we practiced for days. It was tiresome, but we got up at dinner and we made this sign. We stood up and we said, for evening activity tonight, we're going to be putting on a High School Musical show. And your sister has videos of it. They're completely hilarious. But we sang, I think, every damn song of that musical. There was emergency that happened before because my sister, being the young age that she was, passed out. So it was up to Ben, Jack, and I to really lead the show. But man, I've
never heard of that story.
Are you serious?
No, I don't think so. But I do have videos.
I'll find the videos for you.
I have videos of all of you guys when you were younger at Gretchen and Charlie's house in Cincinnati. We had some dance parties.
Probably doing something similar.
Yeah, we had a lot of dance parties there with you guys. So, well, Katherine, anything else? I mean, we could go on and on with our families, I know, but
oh gosh, yeah.
Obviously, I love your parents to death, and your grandfather who we lost way too early, and of course your grandmother who's from the Falls.
Yes, she is.
Joan, a lot of ties up there.
She met my grandpa on a blind date during the summer when he was working
up at Couch, correct?
Really cool. Yeah.
It was a blind date? Is that what it was?
Either a blind date, or I think she was working as a receptionist at, I think, the dentist office in town, and maybe it was blind because her friend was supposed to go. Or no, she was set up with a different Couchiching guy, but then my grandpa showed up instead. And kind of the rest is history, but also those ties to International Falls is very cool as well. It's a special place for all of us because camp is there, but also Rainy Lake is just gorgeous. And I mean, it's very cool that we get to spend our summers there, right?
Well, and I remember stories of your great-grandmother, who would have been your grandmother's mother.
Okay.
Steve, your dad, would take his laundry to her in the summer when we were campers, and she'd always send back homemade donuts that we would just die for. They were unbelievable. And I'll never forget that. But she lived over there in Bald Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she lived in a little house right on the lake over there in the Bald Rock area. Yeah. So those are great stories. Well, anything else before we end today, Katherine? I mean, this has been great. I love telling these stories. I love hearing about them. And obviously, as young kids before camp, you and I lived similar lives growing up on the point.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like we haven't talked about that a lot, just us two, about kind of similar childhoods, you know?
Yep. And now Finn, the Downey's kids are living it, and a bunch of them. So, but anything else that you'd like to share before we end our little podcast here today?
Oh boy, I mean, I suppose watch out for Edge of the Atlantic updates. It's been really cool to work on that trip. There's a lot of work that goes on, especially during the off season with preparing for that, but it's been yet another reminder of how cool this community is. Kind of people rallying together, donating. I got a really cool email actually the other day from an older Kuching alumni, and he had gone out. I'm blanking on his name. I think it's Thomas Hinman.
Yeah.
Goes by. He signed his email as Moose, but it was really cool to receive an email from him because he went out on an Arctic trip as well. And it kind of just goes to show the bounds of these sort of things, and camp in general. I suppose if there's anything I'd like to say today, it's that the community is awesome, and I've really lucked out with great friends through it, and it's important to keep up with those people, you know?
Yep, absolutely. Well, yeah, Tom Hinman, that's a good Cooch name.
Yeah.
He had two brothers, one named Randy and one named Drew Hinman that went to camp. But I talked to Tom not long ago at a Cooch event down in Cincinnati, or a Camping and Education Foundation in Cincinnati gathering. So it was good to see him. And
Yeah, it's been funny thinking about all these stories, and definitely important to look back on, generational names that have really shaped my experience at both Cooch and Ogichi. In addition to those names, there's countless staff, especially at Ogichi, considered to be newer to the community, that have really shaped an awesome environment. And at least the past 4 years I can speak to, as those are my staff years. Definitely an applause to the recruiting efforts, since we've had such a cool group, as I've said, lots of international staff members. And honestly, this past summer, so many women who, when asking about how they found out about camp, they said they saw a job posting online, which, I mean, I can't believe how crazy it was to go down on the Turtle River for our staff trip and really experience everything firsthand, maybe for some of them never having done it before. So many names this summer, and a lot of those staff, I believe, plan to return this upcoming summer. A special name for me, as she was a close friend from college, Emily Genuval Duggan, also known as Duggs. She arrived at camp maybe a week before me in 2024. And when I showed up, I was really bombarded with talk of just how amazing she was, how she was really fitting into the community just seamlessly, and even why I had been gatekeeping her, as people said. That really unlocked a special part of camp for me, and a new side, because I spoke about earlier being able to give back the experience I had as a camper, but this allowed me to give back the experience I had as a staff, at least assist in that. And hearing her share stories from her canoe trips, and she led a backpacking trip as well, it was just really, really special, and something I'll never forget. Aside from that, there's so many people who aren't present in the summers but still cherish their memories and the community of Ogichi. I think of Jane Sullivan, who came up for a summer at Ogichi, and her first canoe trip ever was the Blood Vein River, which I'm sure was some character building, and I guess I can attest to that for sure. I still keep up with her today, and so many other names. But yeah, I just wanted to add that in.
well, that's great. Yeah, the Blood Vein was certainly that is a character builder for sure, depending on what route. I know there's different routes now, but
We were on the northern route.
okay. I did the traditional
classic.
one with the 8 portages to start.
It's crazy.
Your dad and I did that one, so that is crazy. So, but we can't wait to hear about your trip.
Thank you.
I know it's going to be great. And Katherine, I've seen you grow up, your whole life, and I just wish I was as mature and advanced as you are at your age.
Oh boy.
When I was your age, because I certainly was not.
That's quite the title.
You're quite an incredible young person and a great human being, and you've got great parents and a great family. And I'm really fortunate I've been able to know them and to know you and your brother and your sister. And I just can't wait to spend more time with you guys as we move forward. But thanks again for joining us today, Katherine.
4 years. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This has been quite the pleasure.
Great. Thanks again.